back with another Halloween video, and this time I'm going to use some of my pre-colored images from the daily marker challenge from probably a year ago now. I'm also going to bring in an embossing folder. I thought this one from Darice would be really cute for a little Halloween night sky and a little trick-or-treater in the foreground. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the embossing folder and some scrap white cardstock and just run it through the die cutter so that I can create some masks to mask off the city skyline and the moon so that I can make the distress background. So once I have those two things cut out, I'm going to add some Tombow Mono multi-liquid glue and just let it dry so that it's tacky. And then I'm going to set them in the embossing folder and then put a piece of paper in there and close it so that they're in the same position that they will be once I run it through again at the end. So now that it's dry, I'm just lining up a piece of paper and then closing it down and bringing in my Distress Oxide colors. And for those I used Wild Honey, Ripe Persimmon, Fired Brick, and Dusty Concord. And then I'm just going to blend those until it's even. And I actually made the mistake of using some just 110-pound Recollections cardstock, and it seems to take a lot more ink to get an even blend on that paper, and I completely oversaturated the paper, so it was kind of hard to work with. And yeah, so next time I gotta make sure it's Bristol. So I just keep blending. And then once I get all these colors down, I think I kind of lost some of the contrast and they all kind of muddled together. So I brought in some Wilted Violet and some black soot just to give it a little more contrast around the edges and at the top. So now that all the blending is complete, I'm going to just use some clean water in my distress sprayer and add some drops. And then I'm just going to let it sit there for a second before soaking it up with some paper towel. And then I'm going to take that and line it back up in the embossing folder and then run it through again to get the impression on the main panel. And then move on to the buildings. So for those, I'm just going to bring out the Black Soot Distress Oxide again and use some smaller blending brushes to just color those in. And then I actually had to cut another mask to bring the color all the way up to the top without getting it on the sky. Now once that's all colored, I wanted to add some wispy clouds, so I used just some white pigment ink and a tiny little blending brush and just added that across. And I thought it still needed some more, so I took that same white pigment ink and used it to add some splatter. And for one final step on this sky panel, I took some glimmer mist and just sprayed that all over too. So I have been trying to dry this in between with my heat tool, but just it's so full of ink that it wasn't really helping, so I just kind of gave up on that. So now I'm just going to cut down the main panel to 4 by 5 1/4 so that will leave me an 1/8 inch border. So now I just take my images and and play around with them until I have them how I think I'm gonna want them. And then I'm gonna cut an A2 size black panel, and then I'm gonna attach the two together before gluing down my images. I used the same Tombow Mono Liquid Glue again to start gluing down the images, and I could not decide where I wanted the pumpkins. So I just put some glue on the back and set them aside because I knew I wanted to pop up the witch on some foam tape. So I just added the foam tape to the witch first, and this foam tape is actually from Dollar Tree and it works pretty good. So now I just put the witch in place and then finally decide on where I want the pumpkins, and I add them down first, and then I remove the backing from the foam tape and place down the witch. So now I'm going to move on to the sentiment, and I didn't use the sentiment from the Which Way is the Candy set because it was just a little too big for the space. So I used this new set from the Sassy Club. It's called Button Girl, and it has a sentiment that says, have a spooktacular Halloween. And I thought that would work just as well. So to stamp the sentiment, I took some black cardstock, some Versamark ink, a powder tool, and I prepped the cardstock with the powder tool to remove any static, and I stamped the sentiment with some Versamark ink and then used some white detail embossing powder. Then I heat that up with my heat tool, and once that was set, I just trimmed out the sentiment. Went to add it to the card for the second time. As you can see, the first time it wasn't as straight as I would have liked it, so I just took it off and redid it. And I didn't show in the video, but I did attach the main panel to a black card base. And that's that for this card. I think it turned out pretty cute. I just love that little witch image. And so any additional details can be found on my blog at cutiepatootieCrafts.com. And if you want to see any more crafty videos from me, I invite you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And thank you so much. I hope you have a spooktacular day.